Hey guys, it's Mr. Chazen, and I want to do a quick review with you of all of the topics that we have covered throughout this executive branch. We first started taking a look at general facts. We went over what the three requirements to be president were. On your presidential chart, you have three constitutional amendments that deal with the president: the 12th Amendment, the 20th Amendment, and the 25th Amendment. So you need to know those three and how they relate to the presidency. If you're unsure about that, look that up or shoot me an email. You need to know the checks for the legislative branch and the checks on the judicial. That is something, again, that if you want, you can shoot me some emails if you're unsure. And then we really focused on the powers. So we focused on 7 formal powers, and then we focused on 4 informal powers. And we did a slide on each of those formal and informal powers. So if you have any questions on those, definitely shoot me an email and let me know. You have a worksheet that you turned in on Federalist 70. For Federalist 70, what you really need to focus on is the question about what makes up a strong presidency, and the answer was like unity, meaning we only had one president versus multiple ones. Duration of time, that you had a duration that was long enough where they could get things done. Competent powers, so that you gave the president enough powers to make a difference in our government. And then just a salary. So that is the biggest one, and that we needed an energetic presidency according to Hamilton and Federal 70. That one of the ways that we would have a balance of power and checks and balances if you had an energetic president who tried to become the most powerful, and then Congress was also trying to do the same thing, that they would check each other in an energetic way. So that's just the review of Federalist 70. We then went over and took a look at how we elect the presidents, and we took a look at that process. And the process is broken down basically into 2 parts. The parties have to whittle down all of the people who are running for president down to one nomination, and that usually happens through a series of primaries and caucuses, which is currently what we are in the midst of right now, except for the fact that the coronavirus has pretty much put a pause on many of these primaries and caucuses. So for primaries, you need to remember that they're just basically general elections, and that there are 2 different types, open and closed, and that caucuses are basically meetings where you listen to speeches and then you vote with your feet. Primaries take about 5 minutes to do. Caucuses take 1 to 2 hours to do, depending on how big your place is. Once the 2 parties have their nominations down and we know who the candidates are, then we turn to the general election and the electoral college. For the electoral college, you need to remember how we determine each state's electoral votes, and that formula is strictly representatives plus senators. And then we have the actual vote on voting day. And what we do then is we take the winner of the popular vote, and the winner of the popular vote takes all of the electoral votes, and that's why it's called a winner-take-all system. You are trying to get 270 electoral votes, and that winner-take-all really influences where people run, meaning that they pretty much stick to the swing states, because your very conservative and your very liberal states are going to go their specific ways, and because of winner take all, you just need to win the popular vote by 1 single vote and you get all of the electoral votes, and so that's why it's called winner take all. There is another topic right off of this that I did not put on there, the faithless elector. That is the elector who does not vote for the candidate they are supposed to. Remember, electoral college voters come from the Republican and Democratic parties. They are supposed to pick the Republican or Democratic candidate, but every blue moon, usually to protest the Electoral College, they end up casting a vote for somebody else. This has never made a difference in U.S. elections. It has never changed the outcome of an election. It's just usually done as a protest activity, more or less. The other thing that you need to know is that because of the winner-take-all system, third parties get absolutely messed over when it comes to the Electoral College system and running in a general election. Ross Perot in 1992 gets 19% of the vote, but no Electoral College votes. So that's a little bit of a review for the process. Once we went over the process, then we took a look at what are the campaign finance regulations that inhibit you or regulate you when running for president. And so for this lecture, you need to know that there are two laws, FECA and the BCRA. FECA does 5 things. The BCRA does 3 things, and you need to know what those specific things are. Look at the quiz and look at the video on this to remind yourself what those 5 and 3 things are. There are 2 Supreme Court decisions, Buckley versus Valeo and Citizens United. Buckley versus Valeo was a challenge to FECA, and Citizens United was a challenge to the BCRA. Citizens United is the big case, and basically what you need to remember from Citizens United is that the outcome was that corporations and unions, which had previously been banned from donating 1 single penny to any campaign, can now spend unlimited amounts of money. So in the past, Anheuser-Busch would not have been able to use all of its massive profits to sway an election. Microsoft, Apple, same way. Now they can. And so a lot of people are fearful that because of this decision, we have lots of big corporations and businesses influencing elections that aren't necessarily for the good of the people. And then you needed to know the loopholes that these laws created. So for the FECA, you need to know what soft money is in comparison to hard money. And then for the loopholes for the BCRA, 501c groups, 527 groups, and super PACs. 501c, 527s, and super PACs can only spend their money on issue ads. Those are the ads that do not advocate specifically for a particular person, but merely address some sort of issue. They do not have the statement, I'm so-and-so and I approve this message. So that's how you can tell whether you're looking at a commercial from a super PAC, 527, or 501c. If it doesn't have that, I'm so-and-so and I approve this message, then it's from one of these groups. And then finally, we went over the bureaucracy, and we went over the 5 parts of the bureaucracy: the executive office of the president, cabinet departments, independent executive agencies, regulatory agencies, and government corporations. For each of those 5 things, you need to know what is their role, what do they do, and an example of each of them. And again, I ask you to go back to that bureaucracy lesson if you can't remember their role and an example of each. And then the final thing that we went over is the iron triangle, which is how public policy is made. And basically, you need to know that the iron triangle is made up of bureaucracy agencies, congressional committees, and interest groups. And their relationship to each other and how they get public policy completed is so strong. That is why it's known as the iron triangle. And on that lecture, I know it cut off a little early, but there was some examples of iron triangles, and I would ask you to go back and look at that screen and freeze it and just take a look at the numerous examples I have of different iron triangles based on different topics. I gave you one on defense weapon makers. I gave you one on drug pharmaceutical companies. I think there's an agricultural one. There was a tobacco one. And it basically just explains how public policy is made. This is the executive branch. Um, this is a review of what we covered and what you need to know for the AP exam. Um, I'm going to be shooting you a review quiz that I want you to take. It will count. I am asking that you do not use your notes, so take as much time as you need to review your notes over these 5 topics, everything in yellow, and then take the quiz. And then we will move shortly thereafter to the judicial branch, our last branch that we need to take a look at. That one's going to go pretty quickly. It's a relatively small branch, and so therefore there's not a ton of information. That'll allow us then to focus on the last unit, which is civil rights and civil liberties. So thanks for listening. Shoot me any emails on any of this that you don't understand or need a check on, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.